All right, so we're back talking about some of these literary devices that you can find in short stories, again, whether you're reading them or you're writing them. So we do need to talk about setting. So I have a picture on the left and another definition with some examples on the right. So if we start on the left, there are 5 parts to a setting of a story. So essentially, setting refers to when and where a story takes place. Most people focus on the where and they forget about the when. Okay, but if we look at the 5 parts of setting on the left, the first thing is the place, and then the second thing is the time. After that, we have mood, which we've already talked about. So that's the atmosphere, the surroundings, or the feelings. How does the story make you feel in regards to the setting? Also, we can focus on the weather. So climate and precipitation, those can all be factors that contribute to the overall mood of the story. We can also focus on the social aspects of the setting. Maybe the way the characters dress, their language, their religion, their culture. All of those things put together kind of help us identify in our minds an image of where the story is taking place, when it's taking place, what kind of mood do we have, what kind of people are involved. Okay, if you think back to 6th grade, when we read Brian's Winter, we know that the story takes place in the Canadian wilderness during the winter months. Okay, so that really focuses on that time and place, and we also are able to identify, the weather along with that. Um, I want you guys to take a minute and think about your silent reading book, if you're reading one, or any other book that you have read, and think about when and where that story takes place. And then I want you to ask yourself, how did that impact my reading of that story? By giving me that information, how does that help me form different opinions or create those images in my head? Okay, so setting. Every story has to have one. We're also going to talk about today characters and characterization. So if we were just to start off with characters, it's a person, animal, or object in a story. And I say object because sometimes if you think of like a fantasy story or any Disney movie, for example, we might have characters that are not actually humans or animals. So Beauty and the Beast, we have Mrs. Potts, right? She's a teapot, so she is an object. So we're going to talk about different types of characters. So I'm on the right-hand side before I go over to the left. So we have our protagonist, which is the good or central character of a novel. Think of the hero. And I always look at that prefix pro, P-R-O. That gives us some kind of positive connotation. So that might be a way that it's going to help you remember protagonist is the good character. Then we have the antagonist, who is the bad person in a novel who usually causes the protagonist problems of some kind. And we think of the villain. So that word antagonist, there's a verb that stems off from that, which is antagonize. And when I was younger, my dad always used to tell me, Melissa, stop antagonizing your sister. So when you antagonize somebody, that means that you're annoying them or you're causing them some kind of problem. So that's a good way to remember antagonist, kind of the villain of the story. Then we have characterization. It's the way in which the author introduces or describes a character in relation to their looks, age, personality, thoughts, and speech. So a lot of times when we're reading and a character is introduced, the author will kind of give us an image, right, of what these characters might look like. We're also able to come up with our own opinions of that character based on some of the things that they say. Or the thoughts that they might have. So if we direct our attention over to the left side of the screen, we have 2 different ways that authors will include characterization in their writing. So there's direct characterization and indirect characterization. So if we have direct characterization, this tells the reader character. So for example, she was a cheery, upbeat person. So automatically, instantly, we know, bam, right there directly tells us that. Okay. On the flip side, if we have indirect, this shows the reader's character. Okay, it shows us instead of tells us. Her lighthouse smile beckoned across the crowd. So when we hear that, it's not directly telling us that she's happy, it's indirectly telling us. Okay, so if you look at the 2 examples for number 1 on direct and indirect, it means the same thing, but it's how it's presented is a little bit different. Number 2, so we have a direct characterization, gives broad sweep. You can summarize personality in a line. So after learning about our character, 1 sentence, we got this, we know what that character is about. However, if we have the indirect, they use cumulative detail. Actions, words, dress, and other details build up a portrait. So we kind of have to use, so to say, clues that the author gives us about the characters to come up indirectly with a way that we can characterize them. And then finally, number 3, for direct, useful for first details. Concise, broad details are easier to remember. So that's when they're telling us exactly what their hair color is, their age, maybe the color of their skin. That's direct, concise, and we remember those a little bit easier, as opposed to when we have indirect characterization. It's useful for development. Characters' deeds and words add up, and they give complex growth. So we're not given that stuff stated directly. And sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging for us to identify characters when it is indirectly, depending on the complexity of that character. Okay, and I really wanted to point that out to you guys too, because I think that sometimes, sure, we understand our characters, we know our characters, but the way that we can present them in our own writing can actually be very complex and kind of intriguing. So I do not have any assignments for you guys to do on setting or characters or characterization, simply because you guys are not going to be doing a big, huge writing piece. But I still think that for those of you that maybe enjoy free writing on your time, you like to write stories, these are still good things that you guys can use and implement in your own writing. All right, that's all I have for you today. And I will catch up with you guys another time.